All right, we're looking at a 2014 Dodge Avenger. It's got a 3.6 in it. This is Chrysler's main engine they've been using now since like 13, I think, or 12, and they still use it today. This one, noticed that pretty decent oil puddle if it sits a day or two in the driveway, and I tracked it down to the oil filter housing. You'll know it's that if you look at the intake on the back side here where it goes to the transmission. You'll see it'll be real wet. It'll be filled with oil, and then it'll run down the transmission. The top of your transmission will be real oily, and then it goes from the transmission to the ground. And from the research, I've done a few of these. From the research I've seen, they say only the 14 has this problem, but I don't really believe that because I went to quite a few junkyards here in St. Louis to look for a low mileage one, and almost every single engine I came to, the adapter was gone on all different years. So I think this is a problem that's been going on maybe for a long time, or for several years, not just 1 year. They did update the part number halfway through 2014. I think it was 12, 14, or somewhere around there. They updated the part number and redesigned it. Supposedly that version is better. This is one I got off a low mileage car. I had it shipped to me from eBay from a guy I've dealt with before. And anyway, these are probably $250 to $400 depending on what dealer you go to replace them. And this one is a low mileage one. I think I paid $50 for it. And I figure worst case scenario, if it leaks, then I'm out $50 plus the labor. But it should be fine. This car's got about 80,000 on it. It started leaking probably 6 months ago or whatever, and it's getting to the point now where it's going through about a quart every oil change or so, and so we're going to go ahead and fix it today. You do have to remove the upper and lower manifold to change those, and coolant goes through here, so you're going to, this car, like I said, it's almost got, it's got 80,000 on it, so I'm going to go ahead and change the spark plugs on it, and do a coolant change on it, oil change. You're probably going to have to do oil and coolant change no matter what if you decide to change yours. Now they do say that if you over tighten these, that's what cracks them. But this is my wife's car, and I've done the oil changes on this since she's had it, and it was only a year. It had like 10,000 miles on it when she bought it, so it's never been over tightened. It's just a problem that they have. And of course, they always try to blame anyone else but themselves for their designs. So anyway, that's about it. I'm going to go ahead and get on this thing. You're going to have to pull this off, of course, which is just an engine cover. Just pops right off. And then we're going to go through the steps of removing the upper intake and the lower intake. I'm going to go ahead and get it up in the air and start draining the coolant on it. And it's not going to help it too much. There's still going to be coolant in the engine, so you're still going to do, we'll still have to do a little bit of cleanup on that. But anyway, that's what we're doing today. Oil filter adapter, cooler, housing, whatever you want to call it. I am going to go to Chrysler. These have new O-rings under them. And I am going to, or they have O-rings on them, and I am going to go to Chrysler and get new O-rings for it. I'm not going to reuse those. And now this aftermarket you can get, I see anywhere from $50 to $80 brand new, but it's a China part. I don't know if I would trust that. Not that the factory is much better, because I'm obviously changing the factory one at low mileage here, or relatively low mileage. But I would recommend, if you're going to do this job, probably get a factory one or a low mileage factory one like this one, and instead of going after the aftermarket ones. I don't. Surprisingly enough, O'Reilly's and AutoZone and those people don't carry that. I would think Dorman or somebody would come out with one, but they haven't, as far as I know. I mean, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I looked here through St. Louis websites and didn't find it. So anyway, enough talking about it. We'll go ahead and knock that upper manifold off and go through that, and then start getting this thing busted down to where we can get down to the actual. Alright, the first thing I did was just remove this air box. You got 4 screws here, flathead or Phillips, and then you got the clamp up here. Go ahead and move this, move it out of the way. Now's a good time to check your air filter, make sure it's somewhat clean, and then we'll start going through and taking off all these hoses and connections that we need to get this upper intake out of the way. I went ahead and removed this next. You got you know, just a standard push clip that goes in the front here. You have your electrical connector right here, snap that off, and then this just kind of pushes out in the back, and then you should be able to pull it up and out of the way. So that's the next thing I took off. Alright, so there's not too much you have to get off for the upper manifold to get it loose from the throttle body. You have you know, a small connector here on top of the manifold. You have about 2 or 3 vacuum hoses, and then you have your big connector that goes to your throttle body for TPS. You're going to just remove all that. There's a couple of places where the wire's connected. Just get a pair of rabbit claws or dike or something to get behind there and kind of pry them off. And then once all that's clear, we can go ahead and start taking this upper manifold off. You have a few back here on the bracket, 10 mil, or 2 in the front, 10 mil, and then you got the ones in the middle. I'll go ahead and show you that once I get it loose. But it's there's not a whole lot to the back. Just kind of look and see what's connected to the top of the manifold and just pull that stuff off. And of course, Chrysler has those stupid, they love the red clips. On the red clips, if you don't know, just take a pick or a small screwdriver and pull those outward, and then you can press in on it and that'll pull it out. But they won't come out unless this clip, because this clip will normally be down here close to the bottom. Just get on the ledge right here and push it out until it's up like that, and then you can press down on it. So Chrysler loves to use those. So anyway, I'll go ahead and start on the bolts, and then I'll kind of bring you along after. Alright, you can see here I got the upper intake off. You have 4 nuts you have to take off, 10 mil. I'm just going to go over it real quick for you in case you've never done it. You have 2 in the back by the throttle body that go to a bracket that's bolted to the head. 2 10 mil nuts, 1 here and 1 here. And then on the very front, down by your valve cover, you have 2 here. You got 1 here and 1 here. Those are both 10 millimeter nuts also. Now, it won't want to pull up. Well, actually, you got to get the 8 millimeters off too. And you have 2 that are kind of hidden right here, and then you have 3 that are kind of in the open, and you have 1 up here that kind of matches the front. And then those are 8 millimeter. You unscrew all those so they're loose. And then the manifold, because it's on these brackets, doesn't want to pull up. So what I do is I just loosen, I'll kind of show you here. I take a 13 millimeter and I just loosen these brackets a little bit. I don't take them all the way off, I just loosen them. Now this one here has a coolant line that goes across. That has a 13 millimeter nut on it. I take that off, and then I just take a screwdriver and lightly pry on it a little bit and get it open in back there and just loosen it up, you know, 5 or 6 turns, enough to where it'll go like, you know, that's all you need is this much movement. I wouldn't pry on this coolant line too much because you don't want to create a problem, but that's how I do it. And then once you get these loose, it's no problem. And then you can see here, this car is driven every day, probably 30 to 40 miles at least. And we have a massive rodent infestation in here. This thing's pretty much gone. So this is, and then it's just all, so I'm going to clean that out real quick. Really sucks. But anyway, I'm going to get the vac and suck all this out and get it cleaned out. Hopefully nothing goes down this manifold. That's the reason why we're going to do that. And then we'll pick it back up, start taking this lower manifold off. And like I said, it's pretty crazy because this car is driven every single day. And I don't know how they have time to make that nest like that when this car's on the road. But anyway, I'm going to go get my shop vac and vacuum all that crap out of there. And then as you can see, if you're getting close to your spark plug change, now's the time to do it, because you cannot change these front spark plugs with this manifold on. So if you're close, this car's got 80,000. I'm going to go ahead and change the plugs on it now. The back one you can change the spark plugs with the manifold on, but you do have to remove that air horn boot that goes on the throttle body. And now's a good time to do it. If you ever have your manifold off and you're close on your plugs, now's the time to do it. So anyway, just throw that out there real quick. I'm going to go ahead and vacuum that all out, and then we'll pick this back up. Alright, so I'm going to give you a rundown of the wiring. I got it all off. Here's the wiring harness. It's already off. Go ahead and take the ones off your coils. Now those don't have the red clips, so they just snap in and snap out. You press down on the end here. Now your fuel injectors have these red clips, just like your other connectors on the throttle body. And what I usually use is a tool like this to pick with an angle on it, and just get underneath between the black tab and the red tab and pull up on it. And once you pull up on it, then you can just take your pick and press down on the black tab and it'll pull out. And like on this last one here, I pulled up on it and the red clip came completely out, which is right here. It's not a big deal. It'll snap back in as long as you don't break it. This one's not broke, so I'll just snap it back in. So once you get all that disconnected, you're going to have the wiring harness is going to be held by these gray clips here. They're just little push clips. And usually what I use is a pair of dikes or side cutters. Just get underneath there. You can use a cat claw, whatever. I think I said rabbit claw last time. I meant cat claw. But just use these. Don't squeeze them. You know, you just get underneath it and use them to pry it off. And you'll just take them all off. You have two on each side of the valve cover, and then you have one back here on the back of the lower manifold that keeps it the wiring harness tight. And then you have your fuel line, which has the green retainer clips, and sometimes those can also be a little bit stubborn, but I just use regular channel locks, or not channel locks, regular needle nose. Sometimes you can get your fingers in there and you just compress them, push in and then pull out, and they'll usually pull out no problem. You will have a little bit of fuel come out, so put a towel or something under there. It's really not a lot to worry about depressurizing the system. So you just pull that out of the way. That's your fuel line, and then kind of stuff it. And then you're going to stuff all your wiring harness out of the way. It should be free from everything. And now you're ready to pull this lower manifold. Be a good time, if you do have a shop vac, to go through and just go around it and make sure there's no debris that's going to fall off when you go down in there. And just make sure that you know, there's not a bunch of crap falling down into the intake ports. So I'm going to go ahead and do that again. Now that I got all the harness out of the way and everything, I'll be able to do a better job of vacuuming it out. And then we'll start pulling this little. One thing I will say, it's not car related, but I cannot stand rodents in real life. And it's like one of my big pet peeves in life is I can't stand mice, especially and rats. And squirrels are okay, I guess, and raccoons. Well, raccoon's not a rodent, but you get my drift. But the smell of vacuuming this out is just horrendous to me. It makes me want to puke. So, nothing to do with the car repair, but yeah, rodents need to all go away. Cars and rodents do not mix. So, anyway, I got it all vacuumed out, so I'm going to go ahead and start pulling that upper or lower intake off. I'll show you what I did, and then we'll be down to where we're trying to get to, which is that oil filter. Alright, so I went ahead and pulled the lower manifold off. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bolts holding it on, all 8 mil. Just go around the outer edge of it. You got 2 in the middle on both sides, and 2 on the end on both sides, and then it just pulls straight out. And This is why it's important to vacuum out. You can see here I got a lot of debris where I couldn't get to with the vacuum, so I'm going to go ahead and vacuum the rest of this out. Here's the oil filter adapter that we're looking for, and I was going to show you where the oil is leaking out. I'll do that in a little bit on the next clip. But I'm going to go ahead and vacuum all this out and clean up this head a little bit, and then we'll go ahead and start picking this out. And then we're almost home as far as getting this thing back together. So like I said, it does have coolant in it, so you're going to have a little bit of a mess there too. So just be careful. You don't want to drop a bunch of stuff. Just be careful. You don't want to drop a bunch of stuff down into the head. Just get a vac or something and get as much out as you can. Even if you don't have rodents living there, you're probably still going to have some debris that you'll want to take care of. And then I'm probably just going to tape it over while I clean out the gully. Once I pull that oil filter house, I'm going to probably clean it all up, put tape over it so nothing falls down in the head, and then we'll remove that oil filter. Alright, so I vacuumed out the rest of the debris. I just put tape over the intake ports here. You don't want anything falling down in there, and with my kind of, if you got the luck like I do, something will, so it's best just to tape it up while you're doing the work on this, pulling this out. So it's taped up and cleaned up, and then now we're going to disconnect, start connecting the hoses and the connectors. And alright, so here you can see I got it off. You got 5 E8 bolts. There's 4, you know, 2 in the front, 2 here, and there's 1 in the back, kind of hiding. You know, if you're standing in front of the car, you can't see this one very well, but it's there. This gray temperature sensor has a red clip. Pull that up like the rest of them. Push in, comes off. This one's just a regular standard push in. And then you have your coolant hose right here. And I think it's easier to pull this up with this still connected and then take the hose off and then move the hose out of the way than it is trying to get this off while it's bolted into the manifold. When I put it back in, I'll put the hose back on first and then put it in. And then here's the reason why you're going to want to change your coolant and oil and all that stuff is you end up with a mess like this down in here. Because coolant does run through that, you know, through this oil filter adapter, and you know, you're going to have a mess inside your radiator and your engine if you don't change it. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and vacuum that out again, get that all clean, and then we're going to put new seals on that on the other one we have. It's not new, but it's a low mileage Chrysler product, and anyway, we'll get new seals for it and start putting it back together. Alright, so I thought I was going to have to go to the dealer, but actually O'Reilly's does sell the oil cooler mounting set. It's by Felpro. It's ES73012, and that's got all the gaskets you need to replace on the one. Now, of course, if you buy a new one from Chrysler or whatever, it's going to come with all new gaskets. But if you're doing what I'm doing here and you're putting a low mileage used one on there, just go ahead and get new gaskets and put them on. Don't worry about it. And then I also got intake manifold kit, upper and lower. They are reusable, but it's probably a good idea to put new ones on there. Like I said, this car's got 80-something thousand miles on it, so I'm going to go ahead and replace them. And then went ahead and got Champion plugs. These are the factory plugs. I'm going to go ahead and put those in. That way I don't have to pull that manifold off later and replace the plugs down the road anytime soon. So I'm going to go ahead and change out these seals, and then I'll probably throw these plugs in real quick. I'll do that off camera, and then we'll set this in there, and I'll go over the torque specs and all that good stuff. We put it back. Alright, so I went ahead and changed these seals out. You have 2 that are same size right here. You have a smaller one and then one big one, and just use a little pick or something. Pick them all out, and then just, they're pretty thick and they fit into a groove. Each one has a groove, other than this one here is a regular O-ring. I mean, that fits into a groove too, but it's not the same as these. These are kind of thick and they go down in the groove, so they'll stay on there when you're going to put it back on. So it's always a good idea to put new seals in. Like I said, if you get it from a junkyard or a low mileage one or something, just get the seal kit. It's like $23, I think, for this, and it's worth the insurance, not having to worry about leak. So I already got the oil galley all cleaned up, and we're going to just set this in there. Like I said before, I'm going to put this hose on first and put the clamp on, and then we'll set it in there and hook these two up and get these bolts started, and then we'll go over the torque spec and all that good stuff. Alright, once you get it set down in there, you're going to want to kind of push this end where that tube goes down, kind of push it down in there and get it seated, because the bolts won't reach, the front bolts won't reach if you don't do that. And then go ahead and kind of just get them all started and close to being bottomed out. Now this is this cooler is plastic, so you don't want to go nuts on it. It's the torque spec on it is 106 inch-pounds, so I'm just going to kind of go with a crisscross pattern at 106 inch-pounds and kind of tighten it up. And you don't want to over tighten it because it's plastic, and then you'll be back in here doing the job again. There's only 5 volts, so. Go check them one more time. Again, that's 106 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, obviously. So I've already put that hose on, so now I just got to plug in the 2 connectors for the oil temp and the oil pressure sensor, and then we'll go ahead and put new gases on the lower manifold, take that tape off, and reinstall that and torque it down to the correct spec. So that's tight, good to go. Don't forget to plug in your 2 connectors and your oil, because you don't want to forget that. And then we'll install a lower intake. Alright, so this is the lower intake here, and this is the bottom of the lower intake. And it has these kind of a little bit odd shaped gaskets. You just pull the old ones off with a pick, and then these just kind of slide into the groove, and they should slide in there far enough to hold it when you put this back on. So as long as your head's clean, you can go ahead and pop this back on and start the torque. Alright, so the lower manifold's on. All I'm doing right now is just slowly going around and bottoming the bolts out. I'm not putting any torque on them. Going real slow. As soon as they start to grab the manifold, I'm letting off. They are pretty long, so if you have a electric wrench or something, it makes it go a lot quicker. And like I said, all I'm doing is just starting all the bolts, so they don't take forever with the torque wrench. Of course, remember, take off your tape if you taped your cylinder heads. Again, make sure everything's plugged in, your oil pressure and your oil temperature are plugged in. And you got new gases on there. They are reusable, like I said before, but if you got a lot of miles, just go ahead and change them. And then let me get the torque spec and my torque wrench again, and then we'll torque. Alright, got all the wiring harnesses hooked back in, plugged in. I'm just going to go ahead and go through and get rid of these intake gaskets, upper intake gaskets. The intake kit came with both upper and lower. It's Velcro, I believe. Let me check. Yeah, it's a Velcro gasket. It's a little bit pricey. It's a MS 97204. I think it was about 40 bucks. So a little bit pricey for a few pieces of rubber, but we don't want any leaking or lean conditions after we get it back together. Especially if it's your wife's car, you just want to get it back together and hopefully get it out of your life for a while. Stop that whine behind the steering wheel. This car's got that going on for sure. A little bit of whining behind the steering wheel. Alright, so all the new gaskets are in. There's no reason to oil them or do anything with those. We'll go ahead and set the upper back on and we'll start. Alright, once again, these are 106 foot-pounds, or 106 inch-pounds, just like the oil filter housing was. I did not see a tightening pattern in the service manual, but I would start on the inside and kind of go work your way out. Is normally how they do this. And again, this is plastic, so I wouldn't guess on it too much. I would get a torque wrench and torque it down. You don't want this thing leaking, you don't want to break it. The plastic will break pretty easy if you over torque it. And like I said before, it's 106 inch-pounds, just like the oil filter adapter housing, or cooler, whatever you want to call it. A little bit of both. So that's 106 all the way around. Just going to double check them real quick. Sometimes when that gasket compresses, on the other side it'll just go through a couple times with it. So now we're going to hook up all of our wiring to our coils, and you can also hook up your fuel line now. And yeah, you're going to hook up your this is the one that has the missing red tab, so that'll just slide right back in. Not a big deal, just like that. So we're going to put this, just go through and hook all these back up on both sides. Make sure your harness is underneath your fuel line here. It goes underneath it. Hook in your two little holders. You got your two holders here for the valve cover. Same on both sides. I already put new spark plugs in it, so it's ready to go with that. And then once all the wiring's hooked back up, we can put the upper end. Alright, now now that you're ready to put the upper intake on, go ahead and put it on. Sometimes it helps to loosen this back bracket here. It's two 13mm nuts, one for the coolant hose and one for the actual engine head to it. Just loosen it up, get it out of the way a little bit. Kind of helps. Do not tighten this manifold until it's completely flush with the lower manifold. There's two little nubs that come out of the upper manifold that go into it, and if you tighten it with those not perfectly in there, you could crack the manifold and cause all kinds of issues. So just get a screwdriver in between here, or not a screwdriver, a flashlight in between here and the lower manifold, and make sure it's flush down in there before you tighten them all. So I've already went ahead and started them all. They're all flush. So now it's 89 inch-pounds. It's 89 inch-pounds. I didn't see a torque pattern on it, so start at the middle and work your way out, just like you did the lower one. And torque those down to 89. So I'm just going to kind of start in the middle and do a crisscross pattern. And again, this, you're going plastic to plastic, so if you go crazy on this, you're going to end up with busted manifold. These things are very easy to break and crack, in my opinion. Once you do your first pass, go through it again just one more time and double check it. Sometimes it'll seat down and they'll loosen up the ones you already went over. Alright, so let's sort down. Remember, you got the 13 mil nuts that go on this bracket in the front. So we're just going to tighten that, tighten this back bracket, and then it's just a matter of putting a few hoses back on. This thing should be ready to fire. So I'm going to go ahead and hook up those, put the nuts on these brackets here, tighten it down low, get those two back there, and yeah, we're almost home on this. Alright, so I went ahead and put all the connectors back on the throttle body and the air box and all that good stuff. There's not much else to go over at this point. They do say when you change the oil, not over tighten that cap on the oil filter adapter. That's what causes it to crack. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's what Chrysler says, the reason why it happens. Again, I've changed this oil since she's had this car the last 6 years. I've never over tightened that, so I think it's a flaw in the design, and like always, they're going to try to get out of it. So anyway, that's about it. All I got to do now is change the oil and put coolant back in it, and it should be good to go. So go ahead and end this out. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Appreciate you watching. See you on the next one. As always, God bless.